Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about 5 reasons why your period might be late that have nothing to do with pregnancy. Have you ever been in a situation where your period is late and you've had a moment? Because same. I totally know what that's like. Been there, done that. I feel the feels. I think this is something that probably most of us have experienced at least like once in our menstruating years. And I want you to know that before you freak out over your next late period, just think about some other reasons why it could be happening. It might not be pregnancy, although always good to test for that just in case. But I want to talk about why late periods happen in the first place that aren't to do with pregnancy. So let's just move the pregnancy thing out of the way and let's talk about like why your period might be late. So the reason why your period might be late is because of delayed ovulation. And when your ovulation is delayed, that will change the time your period comes. So let me just like kick it back and we'll talk a little bit about hormones and the menstrual cycle for just like a quick second. So when you ovulate, usually that happens about 14 to 20 days after your last period started. That's usually the time that people ovulate. Some people ovulate a lot earlier in their cycle, so some people might ovulate like on day 10, 11, 12, and then some of us ovulate later in our cycle. So some people might ovulate on day 25 or maybe day 30, and that's important to know. So it's really important to know when you ovulate because ovulation affects when your next period is going to come. So after you ovulate, like the day after you ovulate, you move into your luteal phase. And your luteal phase is 12 to 14 days long. It's always fixed. Like it never really changes length unless you might have low progesterone. It might be a little bit shorter than 12 days. Some people might have a longer luteal phase where it's like 15 or 16 days long. But as soon as you pass the 16-day mark and you still haven't gotten your period, usually that's how people know that they're pregnant. They're like, oh my gosh, I ovulated 20 days ago and I haven't gotten my period. What's going on? So that's just like a really quick overview of how important, I guess, ovulation is to the cycle. Because when you ovulate in your cycle, it will dictate when your next period will come. So for example, for me, I usually ovulate around day 15, 16, or 17 in my cycle. And my luteal phase is usually about 12 to 13 days long. So, because I ovulate on day 15, 16, 17, and my luteal phase is usually 12 or 13 days long, my period usually comes on day 28, 29, or 30. When I ovulate, I know that my period is going to come within the next 12 days. And so I track my cycle, as you guys know, like pretty intensely, and I track my rising body temperature in the morning, and that information allows me to like retrospectively track ovulation. It allows me to kind of pinpoint when I've ovulated in my cycle. That is not what this video is about. That is a whole other ball game. But understanding when ovulation happens in your cycle will help you understand when your next period is coming. And that's really important because I think a lot of us, we don't understand that like ovulation can be affected by so many things. And so that is what I want to talk about today. Is I want to talk about the things that can affect ovulation and could potentially delay ovulation. So if I use myself for an example again, let's say that I ovulate on day 15 of my cycle all the time. Well, even though I might have like a regular ovulatory pattern, that doesn't mean the next cycle I'm going to ovulate on day 15. Yes, that's kind of my normal, but so many things can affect my body to make it so the next cycle I might not ovulate on day 15. Instead, I might ovulate on day 25. So if I ovulate on day 25, that means that my next period won't come until 12 days after that. So it would show up on day 37 of my cycle. So hopefully this is making sense. Like you can really understand how if your ovulation day changes in your cycle, that's going to change when your period is going to come. And so many things can affect that. So the number one thing that can affect ovulation is stress. Stress is a huge factor in our hormone health. And if we're going through like a really stressful or traumatic time in our lives, that will delay ovulation. And for some people, that might even stop them from ovulating. The body works in very mysterious ways, but stress is a huge factor in delaying ovulation. And that's because stress affects your hypothalamus, and your hypothalamus kind of regulates your hormone production as well as your menstrual cycle. And so if there's any disruption in your hypothalamus because of stress, that's going to affect your cycle. There's so many ways that you can be stressed out. Sometimes people don't even think that they're stressed out, even though they are stressed out. Other stressors that can really affect your cycle is like traveling. If you're traveling different time zones, that can really mess things up. And a lot of times people don't think of that as like a huge stressor in their lives, but it is. And so that can affect your cycle as well. Same thing about illness. You know, like there's so much stress on your body comes from illness or injury. And so these are just like a few reasons on how stress can like really affect you that you might not like think about. But stress is like the #1 hormone disruptor. So the second thing that could potentially be causing you to have delayed ovulation is undereating, and oftentimes that's coupled with overexercising. So I've talked about this before. I've talked about the risk of period loss if you are going to like, you know, really undereat and overexercise. Like oftentimes these two things go hand in hand, but they don't have to. You know, you can increase your workouts and that can potentially still affect your ovulation. It could delay ovulation even though you're eating really well. Potentially putting more stress on your body, even if it's working out, which often a lot of us assume is like really healthy, and it can be, that can also put some stress on our bodies. Oftentimes our bodies will kind of like figure themselves out and be like, oh, she's just, you know, she's training for a triathlon. It's okay. We're good. She's still eating good. We're fine. Sometimes not. You know, our bodies are really sensitive. Undereating though is a huge issue, and undereating directly affects menstrual health, and it can cause a delay in ovulation. It can cause you to stop ovulating because your body doesn't feel like it's getting enough fuel. It can cause you to have not a lot of nutrients in your body. When you're not eating enough, you're not getting the proper nutrients your body needs. And so that can also affect your menstrual health. It can affect a lot of things. And so that can have a negative effect on ovulation. So that's another reason why you might have delayed ovulation, or you might notice that you're not ovulating every cycle. So the third reason why you might be struggling with delayed ovulation or not ovulating is actually from health conditions. So there's a variety of different health conditions out there that can affect ovulation. The biggest one being polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. People with PCOS have trouble with regular ovulation, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. Also thyroid disease like hypothyroidism, which can cause you to have cycle issues, could potentially cause you to have delayed ovulation. There's also conditions like diabetes that can affect your cycle. If you are struggling with like celiac disease and you're not getting enough nutrients because your gut is really damaged, obviously that can like affect your menstrual cycle because you're not getting a lot of nutrients absorbed into your body. And you know, that's not even something that a lot of people would probably think about, but these are all things that can affect our cycle. Like there's so many health conditions that affect our hormones and our menstrual cycle. And that's why it's always so important, if you have any menstrual cycle changes, to talk to your doctor and get them investigated. Because if you're missing your period, or your periods are constantly late, or your cycle is becoming longer and longer and longer, that indicates that there's something going on, and it's so important to investigate that. Other health conditions that can affect ovulation would be hormone imbalance. So if you have like really low estrogen, that will affect when you ovulate, because you need to have a certain amount of estrogen in your body to trigger ovulation. And there's other imbalances in the body that could potentially cause you to have issues with ovulation. So again, always so important to get these things checked out. Now, the fourth reason why you might experience a late period is your age. As a teenager, I know when I got my period, I assumed my period was going to just be regular right off the bat. And my periods were not regular at all. They were very irregular. And so I kind of just gave up on tracking them, because I was like, they just come randomly. But I see time and time again a lot of teenagers struggling with not having regular cycles, and they think that there's something wrong with them. And a lot of times, and I'm not saying that this happens for everyone, but a lot of times when you're a teenager, your body is maturing and your estrogen receptors are maturing. And so it's very common to have either irregular cycles or to have late periods. If you go a few months with having a 28-day cycle, and then you have like a 37-day cycle, that can kind of be considered normal as a teenager, because your body's like changing a lot. And so it's really common to have some cycle variance. And as you age, your cycle should become more and more regular. Now, on this other side of the spectrum, if you are entering perimenopause, you could also experience late periods, or periods that are kind of irregular. And that is because the body, again, is changing. Like hormones are changing, and perimenopause is about 10 to 12 years long for some people. So I think a lot of us assume that as soon as we enter perimenopause, after like a few months, we enter into menopause and we never have to worry about getting periods again. But that's not true. A lot of people enter perimenopause in their 40s, and then they don't go through menopause until they're in their 50s. And so if you are above the age of 35 and you are experiencing, later and later periods, or you're experiencing irregularity and you're like, what's going on? Talk to your doctor. You could be entering perimenopause, or maybe you're not. Maybe there's something else going on. But around the age 40 and above, that's usually when things start to change. And I just wanted to put that out there because that's something that's also really important to know, because all of us, no matter how old you are right now watching this, if you still have your period, you're going to go through perimenopause and menopause one day. And so it's really important to know that your age can affect your cycle, and it can affect regularity and all of these kind of things. And I'll talk more about menopause and stuff in other videos, but I just want to throw that out there because it's something that we need to talk about. So the fifth reason why your cycle could be late is because of hormonal birth control. And so if you are just starting birth control, your cycle will change. And if you are coming off of birth control, your cycle will change. When you're using birth control, you stop having periods and instead you have withdrawal bleeds. And so withdrawal bleeds are basically what they sound like. Your body is kind of just like withdrawing from the hormones, and it sheds the lining that it's kind of built up while you've been on birth control. And oftentimes people will go through this withdrawal bleed and then they'll start a new pack of birth control, and then the cycle continues. And a lot of people actually don't mind this because you can time when you're gonna have your period. And so that is a reason why some people might experience changes to their cycle. Is you might have a 28-day cycle and then you might take birth control and then your body's adjusting to that, and so your next cycle might not be 28 days, right? Like, it depends on the withdrawal bleed and it depends on a lot of things going on when that's going to happen. The same thing can be said when you come off of birth control. So no matter how long you've been on birth control, your body takes time to like regulate itself again. So you might have gone through years of having like a perfect 28-day cycle because you always had your withdrawal bleed at the same time every cycle. But then when you come off of birth control, things are going to change because your body is going to have to regulate its own hormones again. And so thinking that you're going to have a 28-day cycle after birth control, or you're going to, just have your hormones are just going to like completely normalize like one cycle after, that's probably not going to happen. And that's important to know because it can take like a few months for your body to become regular again. And if you experienced irregular cycles before you took birth control, oftentimes after you come off of birth control, you might experience irregular cycles again. And it's all about kind of just investigating and getting to the root cause of why that's happening. And there's a lot of different hormonal birth control options out there. Some of them might take your period away for 3 months. Some of them you might bleed every 28 days. Some of them you might just progressively get to a point where you're not having any withdrawal bleeds. It's all so different, and that's why it's so important to talk to your doctor to make sure that you understand what's to be expected with the birth control method that you're using. So there you have it. Those are my 5 reasons why your period could be late that have nothing to do with pregnancy. But like I said earlier in the video, if you think you're pregnant or you've had unprotected sex and your period is late and you're like, what the heck? It's okay to take a pregnancy test. I'm not telling you not to do that. I just wanted to give you different reasons on why late periods can happen. And if you take a pregnancy test and it's negative and your period is late, then maybe you can look at the reasons that I've talked about in this video and think, are any of those affecting me? Like, have I been really stressed out lately? Maybe it's because I'm a teenager and it's like kind of normal for me to have like a little bit of an irregular cycle. Like, hopefully this video just gives you some reasons on why this could maybe have happened. Again, if you're concerned, always talk to your healthcare provider. So I hope you guys learned a lot in this video. I really, really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. As always, your cycle matters so much and I'm here for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!